it looked like I was doing well. I had a really great mask on while I was dying inside. And you can do that for a while, really well. And at some point, things start spilling out of your own rucksack, and they did eventually.
You can do this job and be healthy in it.
People can actually grow as a result of their struggle.
This podcast shares real stories of transformation and explores what it means to live well through life's challenges.
Welcome to the Struggle Well podcast. I'm your host, Britt Myers, and today I'm joined by the amazing and beautiful Dana De La Rosa, and I'm just so excited to have this conversation with you today. So thanks for joining me, even remotely. So happy to see your face.
I'm happy to be here.
Yay! Okay, well, so for those who don't know of your lore, Dana, can you tell us a little bit about you and Boulder Crest and your work here?
Well, say more. I love that you said that there's lore about me, but I've been with Boulder Crest for 7 years now, really since I left the Army. I learned about Boulder Crest by going through Warrior PATHH because I needed it, but as soon as I left the Army, I came over as a path guide, and I just have been so fulfilled by this journey in post-traumatic growth that I went from being a path guide to then being a struggle well guide, and now I get to be a part of the future and the new and emerging projects, and just helping new agencies and new places find struggle well and a fit for what post-traumatic growth is going to do in different opportunities. So all of that to say, I'm a master guide for the national team, and yeah, so I don't know if that's lore per se, but
we can get more into the lore as this conversation goes. We don't want to give it all away at the front. And so I know a little bit about your background, but you grew up with, a family where you were carrying a lot of responsibility. And I think it became sort of this common thread through your journey is that not only carrying, your own experiences, but also maybe some others that you sort of just put on your pack as you were going through the years. But just tell me about your childhood and what ended up taking you into the military.
Yeah, so I grew up as a farm kid in Wisconsin. I was very blessed to have a big family. I near Wisconsin or near Green Bay, Wisconsin. So go Pack, go! But we grew up on a dairy farm, and then my mom and stepdad had beef cattle. And when my mom met my stepdad, they had a lot of more children together. And so I have 4 brothers and 2 sisters, and they were busy, making a living, no fault of their own, but because they had to put shoes on our feet and food in our mouths, they're gone quite a bit. And so a lot of the child rearing and caring, and then we had our own animals to take care of, fell on me as the oldest daughter in the house. And so I got to do a lot of that child rearing. And so my brothers and sisters were a big part of my life. And it really set me up for a lot of success, but also you don't realize, what is normal to any of us. And normal is just whatever was the standard in your house, right? And so I think a lot of us, and it's played out in my own house and raising my own kids, right, is that I was told, oh, you're so mature for your age, right? But it wasn't necessarily the case in all aspects of my life. And so when I finally had my own little freedoms, when I flew the coop for college, that it wasn't the case. And so all of the undeveloped immaturities in my life started rearing their head. But I definitely had a lot of responsibility, and you grow into those responsibilities. And so what I didn't know how to do was actually be responsible for myself. I knew how to be responsible for other people and change diapers and take care of little kids, but I didn't know how to take care of myself when that's all I had to do, and I left for college.
It's funny how that tends to rear its ugly head, huh? You're like, "Wait, I am mature. I know how to do all these things." And then I think that's such a beautiful way, like how you said it of, "Yeah, but I didn't know how to be that for myself."
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's easy to find other ways to kind of shapeshift and find ways to be too busy to do the things that you need to do for yourself, even without realizing that that's what you're doing. You just go into the things that you know or fall into what's normal for you. So your identity is shaped by all of those really early experiences and being so busy that you hide or you avoid or you just do what's normal to you, right? And that's definitely how I ended up just traveling a road that was paved for me, not intentionally, but out of love and care. So then when I went to college and I wasn't really prepared for that, and I lost my scholarship because I didn't have the self-discipline to go to the classes when nobody was really expecting me to be there or that I didn't know how to take care of myself. And I partied my way out of that because I was like, woo, I had time to do whatever it was that I wanted to do. And I really wasn't mature in those ways. I found myself in a choice like, do I go back to the farm or do I um, do something else? And I was like, well, what seems to be a great choice would join the army, right? And I had some skill sets like playing music.
Mhm.
And so I auditioned for the army band and I made it. And I made a really kind of a rash decision over the course of a couple days. And I decided to join the military band. And I went back to my parents and I was like, hey, I did this thing. And they're like, you did what?
They're like, "You know how to play the clarinet?"
Well, they did know that I knew how to play the clarinet, but that it was really out of left field that I was gonna join the military. I mean, I was always here's something consistent. I've always been kind of feisty and sassy and a back talker, right? And so they're like, "You know, you're gonna have to follow orders in the military," right? So it was definitely out of left field for me to join the military, but also, to join the military band, like so it was not a part of the original plan at all. But it also made a lot of sense, when I look backwards, it makes a lot of sense because the military is a lot of hurry up and wait. Well, so was life in agriculture and on the farm. You sow a seed and you have to do that very quickly before the ground freezes in Wisconsin, and you hurry up and then you wait for that thing to grow, right? So
Mhm.
it made a lot of sense in those of you listening who have been through Struggle Well or Warrior PATHH, the sine wave of life or a roller coaster experience, right? I was living that before I ever signed up to serve. So it all made sense, and it was actually really easy to adapt my life to the military roller coaster.
Yeah, how was that experience for you? Because you came out of college. Did you go back to the farm in between going to basic training, or did you have was it kind of a quicker transition period?
Yeah, I did have a couple of months of not being in college where I did a quick stint of I worked 3 months in a paper mill and was milking cows, before I went yeah, fun fact, before I went, into basic training, and so, again, how can I be so busy or hustle and do something to really not deal with whatever, I felt like I was this massive failure, losing my scholarship, not doing the thing that was expected of me. So how can I just fill the time, fill the void with doing something? What I discovered was that I was not fit to work in a paper mill, that was not a future that was for me. And that I do really enjoy working on a farm and I love to work hard. I can work hard. I did really enjoy working with the cattle and milking cows and such. So that can be capitalized in the military, and so I really that that could be emphasized, and that was something that I was rewarded for in the Army too, is I can work till my fingers fall off, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, I did have a stint where I went back to the farm in between.
That is admirable and not me at all. I mean, I think I can be a hard worker, but my grandma was always trying to put me to work, and I would just be like, "Please, like, when is—" I just had to know when it was gonna end. Like, how long do I have to do this thing? Like, and she'd be like, "Until it's done." I'm like, "So is it like an hour or maybe 30 minutes? Like, how much time?" I can be a hard worker in very short stints, and that's something now everybody knows about me that we can't take back. Did you have, like, a good experience, though, once you were fully with the band and you're traveling, or what was that like? It's just such, like, a unique part of the military.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of like this weird subculture within the Army. Um, it's a good experience. It's a job like any other, right? A lot of people are
Mhm,
like, "Oh, what a cool thing to do," but it's really kinda odd. You're expected to be a soldier as well, so we had to do basic training with everybody else, and I'm not saying that basic training is that terribly hard, but then you get singled out when they find out what your MOS is, and then all of the one time at band camp joke, I've heard them all, right? Yeah. Um but it's a really unique job where you get to be, the bearer of, like, good faith. We used to be in, like, the same battalion as military policemen, and it was always a joke, like, we would do our jobs, and everybody would hate the MPs, and everybody would love the band because we got to bring, like, the party. But also, going back to kind of the earthquake, um, what are the 2 things essentially that musicians in the military do is or I as a singer or clarinetist, 'cause eventually I crossed over as to being a singer, the 2 major things that I would do in the military would be to sing for parties, really
mhm,
high things, or to sing for dead people, right, really low things, and so that earthquake was still I was living that life, um, but it made sense to me, like, I also, like, lived by the mantra, like, "Work hard, play hard." That's also that roller coaster, right? I just swung rapidly back and forth in that, it was feast or famine as a farm kid, right? It's either the winter, the dead of winter, or it's harvest season, and it's beautiful in summer, and so it just made sense. It was just comfortable. It was the only thing I'd ever known really.
mhm,
And and so it all was jiving. It all, and you live on a roller coaster, and at some point you start getting motion sick.
mhm,
Um and at some point you're like, maybe this isn't working anymore. But then it's silly to say, like, how do I get off of a roller coaster? And it's not as easy as just saying, "Well, just take your seatbelt off and get off," right?
mhm,
And so at some point in the career and at some point of deploying back to back and Army musicians deploy if you're attached to a division, whatever that 2-star wants you to do, essentially, if that division is deploying, then you deploy in support of them and you play music while you're deploying, but you're also your own security force because you know how to run gun trucks, you know how to be that person. Um, Again, I'm not saying that we did any hardcore stuff. I'm not saying I'm an infantry person, nothing like that, but we're soldiers as well.
mhm,
At some point, I'm like, I don't know if this is good for me. I don't know if this is good for my family, but I don't know how to stop because I also, like, this is the only thing I've ever known. Right.
yeah. What were the signs that you were seeing that were making you feel that way beyond your own experiences, especially for your family?
I remember one time, and this was, had gotten married, with my husband and, had deployed going on my 2nd deployment, and, I felt really normal, and our deployments were fairly long, they were a year-ish, and I felt really normal, really good when I got into theater. Felt like, "This is where I belong, this is where I thrive." And I recognized that, like, leaving the normalcy of the United States in that life, like, I shouldn't feel that way. I shouldn't feel like this is where I belong in this chaos.
Mhm,
Um, but then I kept seeking it out. Um, and so, the long story, and I guess is the short of the long, is that that particular deployment meant a lot to me in that I had aligned myself with my husband to deploy. Um, and 2 weeks prior to that, one of my soldiers in my squad had actually committed suicide. He had clearly been dealing with a lot of things in his own life. It was the surge back into Baghdad. And so we thought that we had more time back, boots on ground at home, um, meaning that we should have had probably about 5 more months back at home. But the administration at the time decided that we were going to go back in earlier. And so we had a very shortened amount of time to get our lives back in order. Um, and he took his own life when he realized that we were going to have less time. And I decided just kind of internally that to make sense of losing him, that we were going to play extra music in his name on that deployment and give that deployment a job in itself. And I felt good about that mission because we were going to have that opportunity to play more music, where the previous deployment was more security operations, because that was a secondary job for military musicians. And being deployed with my husband, a lot of people didn't know that we were allowed to share the same container housing unit together, which we called CHOOSE, and that we were actually married to each other because I didn't take his name while I was in uniform. I mean, silly enough, I had my own last name, right? I didn't need his. I mean, since then I've taken his last name, and we were professionals. Like we didn't act like we were married. We like people just didn't know what they didn't know. And I didn't know that the particular birth control that they were issuing at that FOB, that forward operating base, was expired, had sat in 140 degrees, had been tampered with. And so you can probably see where this is going, is that, yeah, I found myself pregnant in the combat zone about 5 months into that deployment. And I was just as shocked as everybody else, and to find out that I was going to be medevaced home when I had given that deployment such a deep meaning and making sense of the loss of my soldier was devastating. And I didn't want to be pregnant. And I understand that a lot of people struggle with pregnancy, and so I'm not saying that I wished it to not be true. When you take into consideration that I was trying to make meaning of that loss, when deploying itself was what I felt was my life's work, when I was the only singer in theater, and me leaving theater meant that there would be nobody to sing for soldiers who were dying, and they were dying in droves. Like, we wouldn't do a memorial unless there were 3 deaths at a time. So I felt the immense weight of shame, of being taken out of theater for an unwanted, unplanned pregnancy. And then people fill in the blank of just the things that they don't know. And so what makes sense for a female who happens to be the singer in front of the band, dancing in front of the band, who they don't know is married and they don't know her husband is in theater with her? Well, she must be the combat slut. She must have tried to get pregnant and get out of this deployment. And so in addition to the shame that I had put on myself, now people are saying that that's the shroud of guilt and shame that I'm going home under, and is that I'm the combat slut. And so it felt unbearable. And that deployment was planned to be 12 months. It turned into 15 months. And so what that meant is I went home to spend the entire pregnancy alone. It was high risk, probably partially due to the stress I was under. and I gave birth alone. During that time, my grandmother, who had a huge part in raising me, passed, and because I was high risk, I wasn't able to go pay my final respects. It was just kinda like each brick adding up on top of itself, and I got to a place where, I was ready to check out. But I wasn't gonna do that while I was pregnant, and so I was gonna wait until, my husband returned home. But I had devised a really solid exit plan, um, and it wasn't gonna be like a call for help, it was gonna be a mission execution, um, because that's what I do is I execute, and my mother-in-law showed up a few days before his troop arrival, and her presence, threw a wrench in my plan, and clearly I didn't execute that. I'm still here today, and but what I didn't do in just not executing that plan was actually deal with my shit.
Mhm.
What I just didn't do was not do that. And so instead, I did the only thing I knew how to do, and that was to work. That was to hide in the things that I knew how to hide, to hide in my normalcy, and that was to work, work, work.
Mhm.
And I did, I did seek out some help because, when a mother goes in for the well baby checks, they can kind of see I'm glazed over, like, well, it must be postpartum depression. I'll be like, yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And so I did take some of the medication and I was a zombie and weaned myself off of that eventually. And then I just threw myself back into work, back into things where people would praise me. I volunteered for every deployment I could get my hands on. Started doing bodybuilding shows, you name it, things that I was rewarded for.
Yeah, and your
Normal,
husband didn't know about any of that you had been going through while he was deployed?
right? He didn't know a thing. Nobody, uh, even the people closest to me, and I did have close relationships, but I knew how to hide expertly in nobility, in things where it looked like I was doing well. I had a really great mask on while I was dying inside. Yeah. And as a leader, it's easy to help other people instead of yourself, right?
Mhm.
And you can do that for a while really well. And at some point, things start spilling out of your own rucksack and it did eventually.
I know. What was that point where it's you couldn't hide behind the mask any longer and things were spilling out too quick?
Um I the Army in its infinite wisdom, and I'm not talking smack on the Army. I mean, really, they
It's okay if you do.
they decided that they were gonna move us from Fort Stewart, where my husband and I wanted to stay. We felt like we bought our retirement home there and everything, and was gonna move us to sleepy Fort Huachuca to a non-deployable unit. I mean, between the two of us, we had deployed 11 times, and they're like, you guys need to take a knee and go to a non-deployable unit. So they brought us out to Arizona, and it was really then, without the avoidance tactic of deploying over and over again, that we were like, "Wow, what now?"
Mhm.
And it was like it, it was like a slow trickle of things starting to spill out when we got to Arizona. I was like, "We have kids that aren't okay." That I think was probably the turning point where I was like, our 9-year-old son had, like, suicidal ideations, and our teenager, I mean, he was a 16-year-old, and I think, 16-year-olds are kinda hard to raise, but, he wasn't doing okay either, and our marriage was not okay at all. Like, we didn't know if we even liked each other anymore, and, like, "Do we wanna stay in this?" And I was like, "Wow, you've really messed this thing up, Dana. Like,
Mhm.
maybe you need to start with yourself," and I learned about Warrior PATHH because in Arizona near Fort Huachuca, one of our locations is, and I thought, like, there's a place I can go without somebody taking notes, and I can do it on my own accord. So that's where I learned about this. And there's really something special about our locations, right? If you've been to any of them, you know. And I felt really safe. And here's the silly thing is I went, I actually, like, I learned about it because we're next to one, but then I got sent to Virginia, which is beautiful, and it was wonderful. But here's the silly thing is that I decided, okay, I'm going to go deal with some of my demons, but I decided that I was going to table some of them, right? Here, I'm going to go talk about these things, but not that.
Yeah.
But
Save these ones for myself, I guess.
yeah. But I'm not going to talk about these because it shows just how bad of a human being I am, right?
Mm.
But I got there and they came out. Like, I felt safe enough to actually talk about those things. And that's the beauty, is that, you know, once you start, like, actually doing the real work, then it's this permission of, like, no, it's time to do the real work. Here we go. And like, it's not hard, but it is hard work to do because after avoiding or hiding so well, you're like, all right, we're deep in the mud now.
Yeah, we're in it.
Yeah, we're in it. I might as well. Yeah. But
Yeah.
every single step of this journey has been worth it. And so it's been 7 years since I've been to Warrior PATHH. It's been, since then, I've been with Boulder Crest, and every single step has been worth it. And it's not over. Like, this is, every single opportunity that I get to talk about post-traumatic growth, or to be in a class, or to guide other people, like, I feel like it's kind of selfish because I learn more, I feel like, than I could possibly share with other people. It's an amazing experience.
I know. I feel like that just listening to the stories. I feel selfish. Even Josh asked me about that, and I said, I just find the conversation so healing. And then I felt bad after I said that it was, like, so self-serving, but it does feel that way.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you had said, you stayed, you used the roller coaster analogy, but once you went to Boulder Crest, it's not like you came off the roller coaster and you just, everything's, great and life isn't going to throw any more challenges your way. And in fact, it was kind of the opposite for you, right? Like, you guys still had really profound struggle that you went through after you were even introduced to Boulder Crest.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't stop. And I think, sometimes I'll share with people, like, one of my struggles, even when life is going good, is like, things are too good right now. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. But, and I think I've kind of gotten past that, but, like, there's still going to be struggle. And so, I've had, like, one of my best friends that I retired from the Army with, another Army bandsman, really, really close friend to our family, the type of friend that we call an uncle, Uncle Freddie Valenzuela. I didn't know he was struggling. Actually, I thought life was going really good for him. He had just been promoted into a new government job, had just bought a new vehicle, like, life was good. He took his own life. I was the last one to see him alive. He left me with his stinky old pugs. Like, he
The
rescued
dogs?
pugs.
Oh.
He rescued pugs. I rescued pit bulls. Like, we were so connected in so many different ways. He called me one morning and gave me some fake story to get me to pick up his dogs. And I turned around with his dogs, and 20 minutes later, he shot himself. And he left me as the executor of his estate. And I didn't see that coming. Um, and that, I lived this life, right? That was like 4 years into me being a guide, and I'm like, how did I not see that? And then I have to remember that I didn't show anybody signs either, right? He was hiding too.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do you deal with that and live these principles? I mean, the way that played out in my life was completely different had I not known post-traumatic growth, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And 90 days after that, we found out that our son, Gustavo, had a rare form of liver cancer. So, kick us while we're down, but life doesn't stop just because we know that post-traumatic growth is a thing and we start living it. So, there we were. So now what? Right?
Yeah.
Because
Sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, did you feel like because I knew about you going through Border Crest, but did your husband, and like, how were you guys walking together through all of this struggle?
Yeah. Well, thankfully, my husband had actually registered to go to Warrior PATHH about a month before our friend Freddie had taken his life. And not weirdly, I don't believe in coincidence, he ended up going to Warrior PATHH 2 days after Freddie committed suicide. And so the timing of that was just brought by the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And so he grieved his way through Warrior PATHH.
Mm-hmm.
And another growth point is that I'm not ashamed of crying. It's just part of,
I know I'm trying to not, and you're making it really hard. So sorry.
Oh, no sorries needed. And so then, so then as we learned of our son's cancer diagnosis, then now we have this common language to walk through this together, right? What a huge difference that was, to be able to manage our energy, to know what deserved our energy moving through that, and our child who had the benefit of mostly growing up around post-traumatic growth from it just being a language that I use and practicing gratitude. I mean, it's funny that I mentioned gratitude, but in the hospital, we spent months in the hospital. We had a gratitude board on the hospital door, and this was still during they were still practicing COVID, so we had to have the doors closed and everything. So on the door, we told nurses and the doctors, the first time you come in for the day, you had to write a gratitude down. Well, fast forward to a few months later, I met with some of the moms that were there at some dinner, and we were talking about, who was in the ward at the same time. And they're like, "Oh, you were the mom with the gratitude board. I hated you for that thing." And I was like, "Really? I'm sorry. I didn't mean for you to hate." She was like, "Well, I was so stuck in a rut. I would just turn my nose up at that thing. I couldn't imagine anybody finding gratitude in that place." But we were that family,
Aww.
but we walked through it completely differently because we had that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, we just got to, it's been, I'm not good with timelines and stuff, but I guess he's been, he's been 2.5 years, without cancer now. And we just got to go on his Make-A-Wish trip a few weeks ago. But, he sees cancer as this huge positive turning point in his life. He just sees the whole experience as this really positive point that brought him all of these other opportunities that he never would have had because of it.
Wow.
Right?
Jeez,
Yeah.
Dana. I mean, it's remarkable. It's Gustavo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he's doing great today.
He is. He's super healthy and super sassy, but
Well,
it's a different perspective, right? Of a kid that might not have lived through that. Yeah.
yeah. What'd he do for his trip? Where did you guys go?
We went to Madrid, Spain, and he wanted to see a Real Madrid game in person. And so we got to watch a Real Madrid game against Man City pitch side. Amazing.
Yeah. How was that experience? Had to been awesome.
It was amazing. Yeah. Once in a lifetime, right? And they won 3-0. Yeah.
No coincidences, like you said.
No coincidence.
Yeah. How's your older son?
He's so good. He is 24, newly married, and about to have our 3rd grandchild. We have 2 other grandchildren from our oldest son, but he's so good. He's also, how about this for coincidence, dual military couple, and his wife is pregnant while he's deployed, right? How is that for coincidence?
Yeah, maybe they don't have to go down your exact same path.
They don't, because he gets to come home for the birth, but he's really great. He's really great.
That's amazing. Oh, I'm excited for you. For one, having another grandbaby. I know you got those pitties there. Do you still have the
Yes.
pugs?
No, we don't have the pugs. They were very elderly when they came to us, but then Freddie's sisters adopted them, and but then they passed not long after Freddie did, actually. So
I was going to say, I am a little disappointed you don't have any of your dogs in the shot.
In the shot? Well, they're not good at podcasts. Yeah, I am a crazy dog lady. Well, okay, fair enough. Maybe we can do a pit bull podcast at some point. But yeah, so some of, like I don't live a roller coaster life all the time, but I still do crave a little bit of chaos. And so that does play out in my life. I have 6 pit bulls. And I mean, you have to choose where the chaos exists, right? And so that is in 6 dogs. I probably have too big of a garden to manage. I probably travel too much. 6. Yeah.
It makes me think of that Bridesmaids clip with Melissa McCarthy where she's like, I took 9. Just when she's taking them puppies. She's like, might have overcommitted. Might have been a little too many. 6 pit bulls all in your home today. Wow. It is a lot.
I overheard my husband tell one of our friends, they're like, well, what's the ideal number of dogs for you? And he was like, 3. And I was like, what did you say? He was like, 6. I said 6.
Yeah, you said you had to get him bought in on this sanctuary.
I did. Yeah. But that makes me think maybe he's not bought in like I thought.
He probably doesn't know you actually have 6. Maybe they blend in.
Oh, he does. He does, because I travel so much, so I have to leave him with the craziness all the time. Yeah.
Well, we'll have him on next episode.
Yeah, maybe I need to have a hard conversation and, really get to the bottom of it.
Yeah. We'll save that one. I am curious, Dana, just because you've been so ingrained in Boulder Crest for so long. And also, one thing you didn't mention that I knew about beforehand was you heard about it through a mentor of yours, right? And had seen his experience, and you were like, well, if it worked for him, maybe it's something that could work for me. And I wonder now if you're that for other people, and I bet you are. And I'm just curious what still resonates with you all these years later as you continue to go through struggles like we all do, but what you found that really continues to pull you into the work.
I mean, it's really the peer-to-peer model that was so profound to me, right? And it was a mentor that I knew in the Army, and it was a senior NCO who was always very kind but very direct. And I saw him leave the military, and he got like a really great job. And then he left that job after learning about what Boulder Crest was. And I was like, that quality of a human being leaving that kind of job to go over to Boulder Crest, like that says something. There's something to this place. And then I learned about what it was kind of covertly, and I was like, they're doing what? Without it being diagnosis related, without it, because I had no diagnoses. I wasn't seeking out any kind of help. I wanted to have control over my career. I didn't want to go have medication thrown at me. I didn't want any of that to happen, right? And this peer-to-peer model is just a different approach. And it's just such a different way to I don't wanna say handle it, but for somebody to speak these kind of truths, but also being very kind, right? Direct is kind, but it's also like, I don't know, it's profound to me still to this day. And also, like, to have these conversations, when I say that it's selfish, it's still selfish to me to hear these people, like, when we have real conversations in the classroom, we have real conversations because I love also hearing people say, "Well, I think what you're saying is bullshit." It's like, "Well, tell me more because I wanna hear it." "And why do you think that?" "Because maybe, like, I wanna hear it. Let's have the conversation because I learned something from that."
Mhm.
And when people say like, "Well, I have grown from these things and I don't need your class." I believe them.
Mhm.
I believe that they have grown from the hard things that they've been through, and I wanna learn from what they've done. How did you do that?
Yeah.
'Cause I wanna do that too. Like,
Mhm.
I learn so much from these human beings, and we all can, right? And
Mhm.
and Struggle Well and Warrior Path and PTG puts a language around it so that we can help other people learn from it, but there's more to learn. Like, the
Mhm.
learning's not done. It's profound to me, and it's still like, I wanna know it all. Like, I'll never know it all, but I want to know more from all of these people out there who have learned from the hard things that they've been through. There's so much wisdom to gather.
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten that even just in this conversation with you, right? Is just your perspective and how you've taken these really. There's a lot of things that brought you to your knees, Dana, but being able to stand back up again and to keep doing that, and that's the really human, relatable side of this. Is and what we were just talking about even earlier today is, I think the really authentic part about Border Crest is it's not this like perfect magic pill that we're going to be able to wipe everything away. This isn't going to be that. And you're going to continue to have things that take you to your knees, but you're going to be able to stand back up again. And you're also going to have people there to stand beside you. And that's the really powerful part.
Yeah. Well, and I l so many people are like, "Well, what I went through is nothing compared to what so and so went through." And I always kind of volunteer, like, look at the big trauma that I say I went through was that I got pregnant by my husband. Like, you know what I mean? Like, get over yourself, Dana. You got
Yeah.
pregnant. You had this beautiful child, right? It's not. But when you take into consideration what led up to me feeling that way,
Mhm.
right? It's not the thing, it's how it made somebody think and feel and act the rest, right? It's not the thing. And when we strip down like that comparison, then now let's have the conversation.
Mhm.
And it's also not about combat, it's not about that. And when we kinda get to the root of stuff, we can remove a lot of these barriers that we've put up, and I didn't think that I had much in common with a lot of other people because of these barriers, like whether it was cops or whether it was civilians, until we started having the real conversation, like, um, what a profound experience it's been to be involved with police agencies. And some of my favorite people now, some of the closest friends I have are cops. And I didn't dislike them before, but I didn't realize how much I had in common with them. And one of the best conversations I had was in between breaks, during a struggle well class, that I realized that our core principle was that we believed that this guy, a K-9 officer, and I believed that we could save everybody. But
Mhm.
we didn't realize that until we got down to the bare bones of why we felt so strongly about something that happened to us,
Mhm.
right? And then once we've like it was quite literally once we said it out loud, we were both like,
Yeah.
and there it is. And then when you say it out loud, we both realize like, well, of course we can't.
Mhm.
Right, of course we can't, but we can damn sure try,
Mhm.
right? But then you have the realization that, like, okay, now I can move forward. I can try to help as many people as I absolutely can try.
Mhm.
But then when you realize, like, I am but a human, and I'm not going to be able to save everybody, Like it's powerful and it releases you. And it was with somebody I'd thought that I didn't have anything in common with. Right?
Turns out you did. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh, I have no doubt that you're impacting a lot of lives and that you have saved a lot of lives. And that is one of the things, I guess, final things I wanted to ask you is, I'm sure there's people who are listening right now or watching this and going through their own period of struggle. And I'm just curious what you would say to them, to somebody who's at that moment that you were at, not all that long ago. And maybe again in the future, right? Like you may have another struggle on the horizon, but what you would want them to hear.
I don't know if I have, deep wisdom for that other than it's just in all of those small steps that you take for yourself that all add up. Like the small moment that you stop to give yourself grace, that you give yourself the rest that you deserve, that you meditate, that you allow yourself to be a human, right? That you allow yourself the tears, right? And not be ashamed of that aspect of your emotions, right? And that you allow yourself to empty a rock out of your rucksack so that you have the space to give the people that you say you love the most the actual time and presence that they deserve, right? It's in all of those small moments where we make the massive changes that they feel tiny.
Mm-hmm. I mean, beautifully said. And I think that does describe the lore that is Dana De La Rosa, that even when you think it's not profound, it still is. But yeah, is there anything that you wanted to add or that we didn't get a chance to talk about that you think would be important for others to hear? Do you feel like we covered the gist of who you are and the work you've done and the impact you've had?
I think we covered the gist. I'm just so honored to be here. Thank you.
Of course. I'm so glad that we got to talk, and I am going to hold you to another episode where whether it's your husband, the dogs have to be present. That's a must.
Okay.
All of them.
Deal.
Okay.
All of them. Okay.
Done.
Chaos.
Yeah. Okay, maybe start with like 2, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Thank you, Dana. I so appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Brett.